the most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real-world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Watkins Glen International has been a staple in U.S. road course racing since 1956. It hosted the U.S. Grand Prix for 16 years and has held a NASCAR event since 1986. The 7-turn road course in the Finger Lakes of New York hosts the Red Light Scrambler Racing Series here tonight on PTR TV in round 4 of their 15-race campaign here in the 2019 Season 2. They are going to be in the Monster Energy Cup machines for 40 times around this twisting and turning road course, and it's going to be myself, Corey Silva, in the booth giving you the calls, and a little bit of a break for him, but he is back. Marshall Crocker Jr. will be with me in the booth here tonight, man. So again, the Red Light Scrambler series, kind of the defining thing with this series is how they switch them back and forth between each machine, between each of the top tier NASCAR vehicles, and here we are with the 750 horsepower package in the Cup cars here tonight.
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Corey, and glad to be back from my hiatus. But yeah, we may have run 4 races in this Red Light Scrambler series, but this is only our second Cup Series race. And taking aside the discipline at all, it's our first road course. So a lot of new aspects for drivers tonight. Very little experience comparatively on the Cup car to what they would normally expect if you ran a full season in the Cup Series. But But yeah, they also have to adapt to this very challenging, I'd say, road course, especially in the Cup Series where aerodynamics play a big part, and that power is definitely going to be evident. So we'll see what guys can adapt to this new setup in every way imaginable.
Yes, it is. And again, with the new Monster Energy Cup package, we have all the aerodynamic features on them, the aero ducts, the massive rear spoiler, and in this case on the road course, we still have the horsepower on the 1.5 miles and such. You know, we're down to the 550 horsepower package, but we have, I mean, to say it bluntly, we have all the balls under the hood here this week. We have the 750 horsepower, so the wheel spin is going to be something to be concerned about, as well as saving the tires and not spinning out off the slow corners here. And as we are going through the qualifying lineup, Tim Blum leading the field down by over 0.6 of a second. You heard that correctly. Tim Blum up by 0.6. Marshall, every series has the road course ace. I think we may have found it tonight.
Yeah, to make a NASCAR reference, we may have our Marcos Ambrose tonight, because, man, Tim Blum, he had the fastest lap in practice. He was running really quick from what I saw, and he comes out here and runs 0.7 quicker, and even in the chat, he's getting congratulated by everybody. So if there's one guy to watch out for tonight, it might be Tim Blum.
But I want to take that to a real-world reference, Marshall, is we've seen in the Monster Energy Cup Series at Sonoma, well, if you just watched it yesterday, actually, if you're watching this live, Kyle Larson has won 3 consecutive poles at Sonoma. And you want to know how many races he's won at Sonoma? None. So sometimes the hot lap is not going to persevere in the long run. So we will have to see if he's able to keep the car on the track for all 40 laps, and if he is able to pull the strategy card and play it right for his success. But I do want to give up the show you the track map, as well as the weather conditions that these guys will be enduring tonight. The 2.4 miles, you can see the layout here. Turn 1, the S's. We have the bus stop, the carousel, the back straightaway, and then the 2 final 90-degree turns to lead you back to the front straightaway. But it is a 76-degree air temp with a 100-degree track temp, Marshall. So 100-degree track temp. It's on top of already being difficult with the machines. It is going to be a slick one out there tonight.
Yes, it is. It'll be a big challenge for these guys who, even if you have experience in other road course disciplines here in the Cup Series, with that extra sliding and a track with runoff in some places but not so much in others, it'll be very difficult to not only keep it on the track but keep going quick and try to pull away from this very talented field.
Yes, that is going to be a challenge indeed, but these guys are lining up onto the starting lineup, so let's give it to you. The PTR TV starting lineup here from the Watkins Glen International Raceway. On the pole here tonight, as we just said, with Full Throttle Racing, Tim Blum, a 1 minute 8 second 0.596 second lap, has a 0.6 of a second buffer over his second place driver on the front row, Richard Murdoch. Full Throttle Racing on the front row, as a matter of fact, here tonight. In third, we have Max Terrio, James Skelton in fourth, Andy Lee in fifth, Eric Johnson in the sixth spot. Seventh is Ethan Troutman, eighth is Eric Tupper.
In the ninth position, Joshua Buckley. In 10th, David Camara. Todd Cray in 11th. The first of the Stranos, Joe Strano in 12th. Patrick Orr in 13th. Brandon Minto, third in the series in 14th. Gary Weaver in 15th, and Leo Bordage in 16th.
17th, Tony Strano, and we can confirm Strano Brothers Racing, Joe and Tony are brothers. I was confirmed that in pre-race. Christopher Rothrick in the 18th spot, Jesse Baker in 19th, and in the 20th spot is Brian Phillips. The Aussie, Kevin O'Brien in the 21st spot, Kyle Souza in 22nd, and those are the 11 rows of drivers here tonight. Our keys to the race presented by Fame Motorsports merchandise. Save the rear tires. Again, the 750 horsepower here tonight. You're going to want to get on that power as quickly as possible, but you have to use some caution in it, as you will burn up those rear tires and risk a spin out. Minimize the wheel hop entering these braking zones, particularly turn 1. It's going to be exactly as it sounds. The rear tires are going to chatter. They're going to hop, and you're going to lose the rear end and under braking, and you risk spinning around, so you have to be careful under the brakes. And quite simply, Armco is bad. Stay off the blue, especially in the S's. There's not a lot of room to navigate. Keep it off the wall, keep it on the track. Always an important key on any road course.
Yes, indeed. I think in this track, especially with all the dangerous chicanes and very long sweeping turns, those barriers can come up quick, and especially the curbing, you can't always trust it. So it'll be a lot of question marks here for these drivers tonight.
Yes, it is indeed. And Marshall, I think you have the race analysis for us, the details for what we have to do tonight.
I do indeed, Corey, and pretty standard fare, I'd say, overall for a road course. It's a fixed setup tonight, so that, if anything, should be able to even the pack up a little bit in terms of quality each lap. Tim Blum perhaps putting a stop to that idea, but 50% fuel load somewhere at every race in this series, so pit stops will come into play, especially the first time we've seen it at a road course. We'll see how that plays into the race as a whole, and no cautions or stages, so it's a one-way dash to the finish. Cautions, obviously sector cautions as usual for the drivers, but you won't be seeing a pace car out there tonight. So if you make a mistake, it's your job to get it back up there. You're not getting bunched up, and that may give way for a leader to have a pretty dominating race here if there's nothing to bunch him up with the guys behind him.
Yep, and that just, again, attrition is a big factor, so you may have an early spin, some early damage, but as easy as it is for anybody to make a mistake, you got to keep yourself in it. You never know. It's easy to get spots here, as you said, with attrition, and as drivers do have their issues. And with that 50% fuel limit, I'm going to take a pretty safe stab, Marshall. I think these guys are going to probably cut this race right in half, I would think. Actually, no, I don't think they're even going to make it halfway. I think typically a road race is about 35 laps here, so by that logic, Marshall, it's going to be maybe 16, 17 laps on a fuel load, so we may have some interesting strategies with splashes and goes, or no tires, or 12, 13 lap runs. I think the fuel load is actually going to make this an interesting strategic race, but here we come through the final two corners here, depending how you want to number them, turn 6 and 7, the left-hander. Short straightaway here, and that sends us to the 90-degree right-hander that will get this race underway. We have 22 drivers under the control of Tim Blum right now, who's going to get this race underway. That Porsche pace car takes the hard left into pit lane, and we wait for the green flag. There it is. We are road racing at the Glen. Into turn number 1, everyone seems to be under smooth sailing thus far. It's going to be Tim Blum with the pole shot into the corner, and that's Richard Murdoch who will clear for second. Max Terrio falls back in line, trying to see if everybody got through safely. Seems everybody is good to go so far.
Very impressive. Often that corner can lead to some big bunch-ups for large groups of drivers, but we seem to have made it through clean, and we've got a solid parade of cars going here, single file as we come into the backstretch chicane.
Yep, and this is one of the better passing opportunities on the track, and I'm looking at the back end of the field, Marshall, and we do have people scattering about in the chicane, but for the time being, everyone seems to be on the road and keeping themselves facing the right direction, which of course is the most preliminary goal you do have here at the Glen, is keep on the track. So far so good. Everybody's still under power. Everybody's still without damage that we can observe. But up front, as we kind of predicted, Tim Blum has the lead by about a second, and thus far I think he may be just setting sail, but again, we don't know how the race pace is going to even out with his amazing qualifying pace.
We certainly do not, and to perhaps hype up his qualifying pace even more, he is less than half a second off the track record here at Watkins Glen in the Cup Series. So that lap he set was blistering, and if the start is anything to judge by, he's going to be just as quick here at the start of this race.
Yeah, indeed. The speeds are up. I mean, in the real world, remember, they are racing on the repaved version. Come on, iRacing, we need the repave. But that increases the speeds even much so. But again, with the downforce, with this new package, the cornering speeds are so much higher. In my own efforts here at Watkins Glen, as I have a personal league race coming up here in a couple weeks, turning some laps. Through the S's, you have so much more downforce. You're going so much faster through there, so much faster through the carousel. It really kind of takes a little bit of recalibration from a driver, as you have to adjust your driving style compared to what you've been doing the past 10 years on iRacing.
Yeah, a very famous road course that I'm sure a lot of these guys have run quite often if they've ever run in a road course series. So the fact that this new downforce is gonna play a big role here in the corners, where corners are used to being a little bit slower and not as big of a threat, come at you much faster in terms of braking. So it'll be interesting to see if these guys can adjust to that if they're not used to it, or if they're not used to road courses like Watkins Glen at all. That'll be a bigger mountain to climb.
Well, we thought Tim Blum was on his way to set sail with the field, but he was up by 0.7 of a second, and he must not have gotten through turn 1 very well at all, because Murdoch managed to close into within 0.2 of a second. And I think whatever mistake he made has already kind of cleared out of his system, because he's back up to about 0.5 second. And Max Terrio, again, another 0.5 second or so behind Murdoch for that second spot. But as we want to quickly talk about the point standings, Marshall, someone who has been very competitive in this season, already winning 2 races, Sean Butler not present. So there's going to be a large shakeup in the standings this week, with your points leader not turning out to the road course tonight.
And the biggest guy who could capitalize on that tonight is a fellow Canadian of mine, Max Terrio. He's second in the points. He already has a win this season, 2 poles. He's had a very good year overall. Started third, still in third. So if he's able to get that ability he's had so far in the ovals to translate over to the road course, he could be a guy who could take a commanding lead in the championship tonight. Yeah,
remember, he could have had another win at Kentucky Speedway. He had chased down Sean Butler, and it was only maybe another 2 laps or so, and he would have had an opportunity to pass for that win, but just did not have the time he needed. But he is in very close proximity to Richard Murdoch in that 0-1 machine, so he's putting some serious pressure on. And when you're in a position where Murdoch is right now, sometimes you have to decide, how much do I want to fight for the position? I don't want to give spots up easily. But on a road course specifically, it's very easy to get caught up with what's going on in the mirror, and then forcing yourself into a mistake by mirror driving.
Oh, very easy, and especially in a race with no cautions. If that guy in front of you, in this case Tim Blum, if he gets too far away, you can't bunch up with him on a caution. You got to earn that space. So if you spend too much time fighting with Max Terrio, you might give tons of room to Blum that he needs to take off.
But then look how that changed all of a sudden. Just a little bit of a mistake, or perhaps a better corner from Murdoch. He manages to pull away by about 0.5 second. So it's so easy to be inconsistent here, so it seems. Going back a little bit further, I see Andy Lee in the number 25 machine. He's in close proximity to James Skelton in the Slim Jim ride, the 86 machine. And just in front of them is Eric Johnson. So that's 4th, 5th, and 6th, all of them within a couple car lengths of each other in that battle for position.
Yeah, they seem to be a very separate pack from those behind them and those ahead of them, as the top 3 of Blum, Murdoch, and Terrio have taken off. But that battle could develop into something very interesting, especially because those in it aren't doing especially, outstanding in the points. Now, that is based on a very small sample size, but guys like Andy Lee, currently running 27th of the points, running currently top 5. Sorry, should I say 6th? This could be a big day for him if he can keep that position.
And we did just see David Kamara go by Ethan Troutman, who did let him go with relative ease to exchange the 7th position back and forth. And it does seem like we do have Kyle Souza all the way back in the 16th spot, letting Christopher Rothrick by, and now Joshua Buckley in the 2. He is looking to get by as well. The 84 Rothrick trying to get by Souza. Souza into the braking zone, gets loose on entry. Perhaps a wheel hop, uses all of that runoff room to the outside. Falls back to the 18th spot, but luckily for him, he still does have a car, which is the most important thing. He can get himself back into a rhythm. And now Rothrick is going to try to close back in on Buckley, who's now been able to pull away. Right behind him is Kevin O'Brien. And watch out for the 84 getting loose on the entry to the bus stop. Somebody cutting the bus stop. That was actually Kevin O'Brien. He's going to have a slowdown from that, but obviously overdrove it in there and decided it was safer just to cut through the middle of the bus stop there. And here comes the 84 in the 4. Dueling it out in the back straightaway. Look at the 4 swerving down to the inside trying to get that spot. This is for 16th position.
Yeah, 16th position on lap, 6? This is great racing with a lot of effort here, and Souza just not letting Rothrock get that position on the outside.
And then we have, again, that battle 4th through 6th, but is still under fire. But Marshall, I'm going to compare this, and I don't want to offend anybody, but it's almost like road racing sometimes. It's like dancing. Sometimes it's actually more fun to not know how to dance than it is to be good. Like the people at the back of the pack who, you know, they're probably admittedly not the best road racers, but sometimes those are the better battles than actually the ones up front from the pros.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, especially seeing as how dominant the top 3 are right now, and that battle is turning to be a bit of a separation between those top 3 drivers. But yeah, those battles between guys that maybe don't have as much experience on road courses, or it just doesn't suit their style, those can be just as interesting, because it's 2 guys who are trying to use the track to the most of their abilities, while at the same time trying to battle, which they may not do that often on road courses. So yeah, I may have a prom coming up in 2 days, but this might be the dancing that is far more exciting to watch.
Yeah, good luck to that. I know I have 2 left feet, and I found that one out the hard way, which was that, what was that, 10 years ago at this point? Does look like in that battle between Skelton Johnson and Lee, Skelton's trying to scoot himself away from it, and then Lee in that 25 closing on the braking zone. And with these rear spoilers as tall as they are, as Lee did not hit the bus stop at all, and well, that battle, just as we got excited, he falls back from it. But with these spoilers, I mean, there's a little bit of draft here at Watkins Glen in the prior builds and the prior configurations with these vehicles, but I think here, Marshall, with the spoilers the way they are, I think there actually is a relatively sizable draft headed down that back straightaway, maybe even down the second straightaway, if you will.
Yeah, there really is, and the thing to remember with that is if you're speeding up, you're going to have to slow down, and as we've seen today with some struggles in that chicane on the backstretch, too much of a draft that you're not expecting to have as much of an impact as it does can play a huge part in your ability to break into the corner, and often case your inability if we're judging by today's drivers.
All right, and now we are about 25% of the way through with this race, and I'll tell you, Richard Murdoch, he is not rolling over and playing dead at all. He has stayed within a half second, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, as I think Kevin O'Brien has basically just given up on running the bus stop. He just cuts it as he's just about ahead of these leaders. But I do want to pull up the lap graphic, top 10 lap times, and last time by, Marshall, about half a tenth faster was Murdoch. And looking in the rest of the top 10, it looks like the 972 of Kamara, he's the only other person in the 110s. So those drivers up front are handily faster than everybody else. Kind of wish Kamara could get up there. He seems to have some pace himself, but mired back there in the 7th position.
We just talked about that aerodynamic ability on these straightaways, especially the longer straightaways, but Richard Murdoch may be using that to his advantage, because you're right, he ran 2 tenths faster that lap as well, so he could be closing in on Blum here thanks to the new aero package.
Yeah, I definitely think it is going to help him out, and they come through the S's here, which is a 1-lane section of the track, but it's not flat out, but it's definitely a lot faster than it used to be. So these guys have to take that into consideration. You're going faster just by the nature of having more downforce, but also with any kind of draft you may get. Then we come through that bus stop, which I do know from experience, this setup that is under these cars, the fixed setup that iRacing has provided, is a little bit low here in terms of ride height. So these guys, when they hit the curb there through the bus stop, you are not really bouncing off of it in the way you'd normally do it. You're actually bottoming out off of it, which actually makes it very tight, and you can't really run the bus stop the way we've seen drivers use in the past. And I think people have found that out the hard way here tonight. But looks like Murdoch, he's been doing what he's been doing. Now he's fallen back about a second or so behind Blum. Now the question's going to be, actually, I'm going to cut off. We do have pit stops. Max Terrio to pit road on lap number 11.
We talk strategy, Corey. He's the only one pitting here, and he seems to be having success this season, so if he says pit right now, I trust his decision.
Now, is this going to be a I thought it was going to be a 2-stop race. If he's pitting on lap 11, he may be saying this is going to be a 3-stop race.
Oh yeah, even if this were a traditional 3-stop, this is a little bit early to be pitting as well. So you can tell he's playing this out in advance, and he's not just flying by the seat of his pants. He's trying something here that maybe will differentiate himself from.
Or maybe he's still doing it as a two-stop race. He does have somebody else behind him on pit road as well. Couldn't quite see who that was. But maybe he's trying to get the undercut on the fresh tires and then maybe pit about lap 25 or so. So I think there's a couple different ways he's going to be able to play this out. Now he's back to the 15th spot. About 40 seconds or so behind your leader is Gary Weaver comes to pit road in that number 941 machine. Gary Weaver's first start of the season, a fellow broadcaster with the Racing Line Broadcasting Network. But up front again, look, you can see how wide Murdoch runs on that asphalt on the excess pavement in turn one. Sometimes it's actually to your advantage, sometimes it's to your disadvantage, just using all that extra real estate. Holding about a second or so back, and trying to see what other battles are on the racetrack right now. Joshua Buckley in the 11th spot in the number 2. Brandon Minto in the 20. They are separated by about a half second. That's 11th and 12th position. And last time by, Minto a little bit faster by about a tenth over Buckley.
Right behind the small group there that includes Buckley and Minto was Max Terrio. It may be a big use to him to be able to draft on some of these guys running in the middle of the pack and make up some aerodynamic room that maybe Blum and Murdoch don't have.
You can see here on our track map, as Terrio, he's heading into the bus stop right now. Tim Blum, who has not pitted, he's just about to hit the start-finish line, and Terrio was just about to hit the back bumper of Kyle Souza. Again, that's just the difference in partially skill and tires, causing a very dangerous situation for Terrio, but he's able to navigate through it. And that's the closing rate here at Watkins Glen with tires is going to be rather significant. Again, combined with the fact that I think Terrio may just be faster by these guys by nature. Somebody has an off-track excursion right there. That was Joe Strano in the number 943. We'll go check that out on a replay, see what happened to Joe. Looks like he just overcooked the entry of 6 and tried to go into the kitty litter. But again, continues on with no damage, and a bunch of pit stops this time by.
Yes, indeed, and Max Terrio made a big pass there on Brandon Minto. Great exit to the final corner before the home stretch here, but man, he is just not giving up there. That's Brandon Minto and Terrio. I should say behind him, Kyle Souza coming up on Minto. But if you told me earlier in the race, Corey, that the battle between the second and third place driver in the standings would be for 11th, I would have been very surprised, but you never know what's going to happen here at these road courses.
Yes, indeed. Again, the schedule that, this is a road course on almost every schedule. You have to expect it, and some guys will have it circled, and then some guys will absolutely be dreading it. I mean, I think it's obvious right now if you're Tim Blum, who is in pit road, mind you, with Richard Murdoch, he is obviously loving it. James Skelton coming down after that. So now the question's going to be in relation to Tim Blum, guys who've already pitted. Where are they going to shake out? And then how is this going to affect the remaining strategy in the race? We're at 35 laps to go, give or take. So we're expecting one more stop. Are you going to do it on the early end? Are you going to do it on the later end? That's going to be the question here tonight. Now, Tim Blum's going to have the lead by about 1 1/4 seconds over Richard Murdoch. And then here comes Max Terrio. He used those fresh tires to his advantage and is pretty much within the draft range of Richard Murdoch down the backstretch. Now, the question's going to be, is his tire wear too much so that he's not going to be able to keep up with Murdoch?
Well, as I alluded to a little bit ago, Max Terrio using the draft from some of those, should I say, slower cars to be able to get a little bit of track room. He made up about a full second on Murdoch since he pitted originally. So maybe he's found this new speed that he can use to catch up to Murdoch. And Murdoch is certainly on this first lap with new tires. He's not making too many strides to get away from Terrio. So maybe those tires either not playing as big of a part as this early in the run, or Terrio's just really quick on old tires.
941 of Gary Weaver going a lap down right now. Now he will be the odd man in the middle in between your second and third place drivers. Tim Blum using the pit stops to his advantage as he does take what was about a second lead, turns it into about a 2-second lead right now, as we are just over 1/3 distance in this race. Tim Blum from the pole has led every single lap thus far. Trying to see if he can pitch the perfect game here tonight, but still has over half of this race to try and fulfill to make sure he is capable of doing that. Let's see what else is going on in the race right now. Kyle Souza in the 4. In the 10th spot, Leo Bourdage. That's Christopher Rothrick, who went off and won. Will get out of the way of the remainder of the field. At 84, not having the best of days, but he's being a trooper, Marshall. We talked about it with the attrition earlier in the race. Sometimes just if you don't have a good run, sometimes you just have to be a trooper and just run the race out and just see what you can take out of it, if anything.
Yeah, at the end of the day, plenty of guys are going to make mistakes that are even just running on their own. So just to stay out there and be there when the checkered flag falls, he can make up so many positions here. And we go to the lead here. Tim Blum, I don't know what happened, but Murdoch is catching him quick, and he might be able to make a pass here in the S's.
Yeah, he almost did. And I think I see it here. We're going to go back on a replay. Tim Blum, he overshot the entry to turn 6. See, he's shifting down on the brakes, Just didn't slow down enough, drove it in a little bit too deep, and he got into the dirt and had to slow down significantly. And that allowed that 0-1 to pounce through 7 and onto the front straightaway. So Murdoch has fallen back. Blum had to get that dirt off the tires, get himself back into rhythm, and seems as such that he has done so. But now he's lost that buffer room he did have over Murdoch and Terrio. So now he's back to pretty much where we were on the first stint.
But Corey, if that says anything to me about Tim Blum, it's that even though he may have the lead that was at the time 2 seconds ahead of Murdoch in the L1, he's not content with that. He wants to go even quicker. He wants to keep pushing it and try to extend that lead. And I respect that from a driver that's going to keep pushing even when he's got a pretty safe lead.
That's all. You never know when you're going to need a little bit more, and sometimes you have to err on the side of caution. Other times, you have to keep your foot on the loud pedal, and that's it. What Blum is doing. Murdoch had to get by, I think that was Kevin O'Brien through the S's, which was a little bit scary for him. It's not usually a part of the track you want to be in double file formation, but everyone did get through it just fine. So as we are closing in on halfway, and I know there's going to be a set of pit stops coming up soon, so I want to get it out of the way with now before the lineup changes. Give you a little bit of a through the field right now. Tim Blum leading the field, leading 16 laps up front. Richard Murdoch in the 2nd spot. Max Terrio running in 3rd. James Skelton is in 4th. Eric Johnson is in 5th. David Kamara in the 6th spot. Andy Lee in 7th. Ethan Troutman in the 8th spot, Patrick Orr in the 9th spot, and then Leo Bourdage in the 10th spot.
Joshua Buckley in that 11th spot, Kyle Souza in 12th, the first of the Stranos, Joe Strano in 13th, Brandon Minto, 3rd in the championship, 14th, Tony Strano in 15th, Gary Weaver in 16th, Brian Phillips in 17th, Kevin O'Brien, who's been doing a great job of staying out of the way today, in 18th, Christopher Rothrock in 19th, Eric Tupper in 20th, and 2 drivers who did not start the race today, Todd Cray and Jesse Baker, in 21st and 22nd.
I'm reading here in our PTR TV audience, there's somebody who's telling Richard Murdoch to go faster. One of his Colorado audience cheering him on to go faster, and well, I think he yielded to that advice, because now he's back within a half second. He's going to get a little bit of toe down the back straightaway. Terrio on those slightly aged tires, I think, is losing the ability to hang with these guys, so he has fallen back about 2.5 seconds. But I mean, we saw Murdoch have that one shot when Tim Blum went off, and he did have a little bit of a look to make a pass. He hasn't, though, under normal circumstances, been able to close in enough to actually take a green flag stab at him. But he's just close enough that Tim Blum can never fully get comfortable. And Murdoch sends it into turn number 1. A little bit of wheel hop, kicks the back end out, but hangs on to it.
Man, you must be able to hear that fan cheering him on, because, man, he is sliding it like crazy into these corners now. He wants to make up that room any way he can, and I may have called Tim Blum the more aggressive one for still trying to run quick with the lead, but man, Murdoch is not going quietly.
Yeah, I mean, I go back as a Jeff Gordon fan, probably farther back than you can remember, Marshall, because, I mean, you may have been in diapers in 2007, I'm not quite sure. But Jeff Gordon was leading a race. It was the first race on the COT platform, so they still had, I think, the wing on the cars at that time. He was racing Tony Stewart. It was the white flag lap. Jeff Gordon was leading the race, entering turn one, Stewart right on his back bumper. What did Jeff Gordon do? He got wheel hop, and he ended up spinning out and lost the race on the white flag lap because he was a little bit free on the brakes entering corner number one. So it's something that anybody can do at any given time. It's a lot easier to do later in the run with the lighter fuel loads. I think Murdoch may have done that, but was able to hang on to it as we have a huge accident off of the final corner. That's Kevin O'Brien and the Shell Machine.
Yeah, O'Brien's been trying to get out of guys' ways today. He's been having a rough race, about 2 laps down there. A little bit of damage going into his crash, but yeah, it looks like he just totally lost it there coming into the last corner. Made contact with that outside wall. I guess just came in too hot.
Yeah, we're checking it out on PTR TV replay. Everything seems well until you get to the right-hander. He went a little bit wide, didn't get on the brakes well enough, and hard into the tire barrier, and then ended up into the inside tire wall as well. And he is in the pits now, seeing what he could do in regards to that repair situation. But we are now going to be working on the halfway lap next time by, and so far we still have 15 drivers on the lead lap right now for position, as we have, oh, who was that? I just caught someone going off track again. Oh, I just lost it on camera. Apologies for that. Well, actually, it may have been Kyle Souza in the 4. I saw somebody have issues in the S's or somewhere close to that. Go on replay. I'm pretty sure it was Kyle Souza entering corner number 1. You can see the brakes lighting up, and yeah, Kyle Souza really loose. Entering 1 did the same exact thing that Murdoch did. Then he got into the grass on the exit of 1. And a little bit of a tap to the Armco, but an amazing bit of driving going up the S's. We got to go on board with Souza for that.
Yeah, that was an incredible save. I saw him get loose there, and I thought the worst was going to happen, but man, he used his quick hands to be able to save it there and only slightly tap that outside wall. I'm
going to give him, although there was a little bit of assistance from the wall, I think, and barring anything else that happens, I think that's going to be the PTR TV good hands move of the race right there, because he was absolutely out to lunch, and that car should have been backwards and up onto the side of the Armco, but used it to straighten that thing out, and he is just fine now. And unfortunately for you Colorado Richard Murdoch fans, he has dropped back about 1.5 seconds right now. As we were watching all that stuff on replay, we just missed another pit stop from Max Terrio. So he has made a stop here on lap number 21. And it leads us to wonder, is this 10-lap strategy going to work?
Oh man, he just made heavy contact there in the backstretch with, I'm trying to tell what car that was, but right as we start talking about it, makes a huge hit with the lap car. Oh,
and then Andy Lee went around in corner number 1. Andy Lee was having a great run, so all of a sudden everyone's having problems at once. Andy Lee looks like maybe a little bit of the wheel hop entering 1 and a very slow speed impact into the wall. But trying to look at Terrio, I don't really see any damage to the front of his machine, Marshall, so whatever he may have had must not have been of much significance.
No, I agree. He's got barely anything, but he came in very close with Brian Phillips, a lap car there in the 39, but it looked like Phillips just locked up. He tried to slide it in on the inside. Terrio was expecting to be able to run too wide, and then that lockup just put Terrio straight into the grass.
Yeah, Brian Phillips in the number 39 Burger King machine. You can see he is already... I tried so hard. I was trying to come up with some kind of Burger King and destroyed reference. It didn't happen, but I guess the Whopper may be a little overly flame broiled.
I was gonna say they didn't make that car a beautiful thing, but that's Harvey's, so it's tough.
Well, if it's Burger King, the order is always wrong, cold, and it takes 10 minutes in the drive-thru. So I mean, take that for what it's.
Ours are closing up here in Canada, so I'm not really familiar.
I think it's for that exact reason, because they can't do anything about Oh, here comes Andy Lee to pit road after that slow speed spin that he did have. And let's just bring up the stint graphic. We'll let you guys know what cycle everyone in the top 10 is on right now. And you can see Andy Lee on pit road. He will drop out of that graphic. But Max Terrio, he's been out for 2 laps on his stint right now. Everybody else has been out for about 9 or 10 laps right now. So if you're Richard Murdoch, I think you may want to try to come in a lap earlier and get whatever advantage you can on the tires. He's actually running pretty comparable laps to Blum. And, well, just as I say that, there he goes really wide in turn number 1. He's running, when he doesn't screw up, he's running rather comparable laps to Blum, but I think Blum is just able at this point to be a little bit more consistent, and he's just not making as many mistakes that end up being costly on the stopwatch.
No, he's really not, and consistency is a big key here, really at any road course. But one thing to talk about, you mentioned stints briefly there. If Blum and Murdoch are able to get, and Skelton in third for that matter, if they're able to get maybe 2 or 3 more laps out of their cars here, they may be able to do a 2-stop as opposed to Terrio's very early 3-stop. So that could play a big part in terms of strategy late in the race.
I'm fairly confident when I say that. I remember here at Watkins Glen, it's about 33 to 35 laps on a full cell, so I would have to imagine 16 to 17 laps would be doable. I mean, it'd be very close on the stretch, but I think this lap, well, this is 16 to go right now that we are working on, and then we will be going to 15 to go once they cross the stripe. So I would have to imagine pitting this lap would be enough to get you to the end. Now, we on our behind-the-scenes telemetry that we do have, Marshall, I'm looking at about the average length of time that these guys will be on pit road for, and it seems it's about 40 seconds from the start of pit road, including your pit stop, and then exiting pit road. So 40 seconds that it takes to complete a pit stop. Max Terrio right now is 40 seconds back in 7th spot right now. So theoretically, he should take the lead very briefly, but he's going to need to make another pit stop.
He will indeed, but that number just dropped down to 38 seconds, I think 38.2, so he ran much quicker that last lap. He is on new tires, but that's a big gap there to the leader, and yeah, track position's a big part here at road courses, so if he's able to make those tires last, this could be a big finish here for Terrio.
Yes. So the question for him is he's going to get the lead back. He's going to get the lead probably by about 3 or 4 seconds when this is all said and done, which is great, but again, he has to make another pit stop, so all of a sudden he's going to go up from about 3 to 5 seconds and potentially back down to, 35 seconds again, and he's going to have the fresher tires, but not enough to get that much time back. Maybe he does a splash and go or something on those lines. I'm not quite sure how he's going to be able to salvage this for at least that top run, as here we do have Eric Johnson. He was in the 4th spot. He's down pit road right now, 15 to go. And I'd have to gather that we're going to see the leaders down pit road, and we were watching all those other guys, and what happens? Murdoch's down a second and a half. Here he goes back to within a half second again.
We just talked about consistency and how Tim Blum was doing a great job running those constant lap times, but man, Murdoch has come out of nowhere again and running, I'd say, about a full second quicker this lap on equal tire stints. So maybe he's found the speed late in the race, or maybe it's just the draft with the new aero package.
A little bit of both, because you have to be close enough to make that draft work, and Murdoch is doing a great enough job to do that, but here he's going to come. This is going to be a critical move. Murdoch comes to pit road before Blum.
Yeah, so if we judge by the timing you suggested there, Corey, the 40 seconds, he'll come out about 4 seconds behind Terrio on about 4 or 5 laps newer tires, and then Blum will come in the lap after that. So it'll be very interesting to see where these guys shake out.
But the thing that is most of significance to me is that Murdoch is going to have 1 lap of fresher tires in comparison to Blum, and he may be able to use that 2 seconds or so to come out ahead of Blum at the end of the cycle, and that's going to be huge. Terrio is going to be able to pass them all on track, but he's going to have to give it all right back, or so we assume to be the case. Now, Murdoch exiting the pits right now, I'll show you on the telemetry right now with the track map. Well, we're going to try to anyways. There we go. So now Murdoch, he is just entering the back straightaway right now in third. Tim Blum, he is just now about to take the start-finish line. So we're expecting Tim Blum to come to pit road, and yes, he is.
We talked about where these cars will shake out. Murdoch comes out right behind Max Theriault on far newer tires, so Theriault is going to have to play some lockdown defense if he wants to keep Murdoch behind him.
Well, see what kind of defense he could put on, because if it's good enough, he might sign him on the Boston Bruins next season, but...
Oh.
Yeah, self-roast right there. But I don't think he's going to have much of a chance, but again, where he is most likely going to need to pit, I don't know how hard he's even going to push, because I'm not sure if it's ultimately going to matter, but we will see how it plays out. Well, Jack is still up on Tim Blum. He is just now exiting his stall, and look at Murdoch. He is just now exiting to corner number 1. Looking out of the long shot here, I actually can't even see Tim Blum.
Big pass in the S's. Yeah, Tim Blum is way behind there. Just coming up the hill, he's about to make that corner onto the backstretch. So Theriault and Murdoch played that fuel strategy, or should I say that pit strategy, beautifully there to get in the track position ahead of Blum.
Yeah, we'll go check out that pass in the S's, and well, it wasn't even really much of a fight. I think Theriault just kind of said go, because he knows what the end fate is right now. So Tim Blum, I mean, his pit lap cycle was actually 0.8 of a second slower than Murdoch, which has led to, trying to see, about 4 seconds on track. But remember, that one lap that Murdoch had on tires, that's 2 seconds a lap. So combine about 2 seconds on track with a second or so in the pits. That has led to the 3.5 seconds that Blum is going to have to make up in 13 laps. Now, that's not an insurmountable interval, but it's definitely large enough where he's going to have to hustle and probably pray for a mistake.
Yeah, and Richard Murdoch, only 1 lap of tires put him about 4 seconds ahead, and that's just not very conventional, even with the newer tires. So you got to wonder if Tim Blum maybe had problems with his pit cycle there, such that he added about 2 or 3 extra seconds onto his pit stop compared to Murdoch.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing to get that undercut, and it was not something that I don't think Blum was waiting for, or Murdoch may have just decided last second, you know what, I got to try something, and I think that is what the case is. But I am looking at the gap now, and it was 3.5 seconds, and now it seems to be about 4 seconds. There is the slower car in between, Brian Phillips in the Burger King machine. He will get himself out of the way, and I think another slower car behind them. But going through the field, everything is pretty well spread out at this point. So the things of note I think we're going to have to watch are, when is Max Theriault going to come to pit road? And we just answered that question. Here comes Theriault for his final stop, and I think if you're the crew chief in that number 42 right now, you're probably slapping your clipboard against the war wagon right now.
Yeah, it's a very interesting plan if he can make it work, if he's got, you know, a big plan for late in this race. But really, with how well Murdoch's been using strategy and how quick Tim Blum's been overall, I think he has a tough mountain to climb in these last 10 laps.
He's going to be probably 45 seconds off of the leaders, and he's going to be on track with about 10 or 11 laps to go, and the leaders only have about 4 lap fresher older tires that he does, so 4 lap older tires. If you're Max Theriault, you're going to be lucky to get up to maybe 6th. No, actually not even. He has 5 seconds to close in on David Kamara. And then Ethan Troutman another 2.5 seconds. So if you're Theriault, I mean, your best chance, your absolute best chance result is a 6th right now. So if he can charge, he can get that 6th place finish. But again, up front, the gap between Blum and Murdoch, will bring up the battle graphic. A minute 9.7 for Murdoch, a minute 9.6 for Blum. 1/10 of a second is not going to erase a 4-second gap.
No, it really won't. This is a very impressive turn we've seen here from late in the race here for Murdoch. And just a complete flip of the script, because Tim Blum had such a dominant start to today's race. Even qualifying in general, he's just been really quick today, but he just cannot seem to make up the ground here on Murdoch, even with 1 lap newer tires.
And just getting that win on a road course is going to be very good for, I mean, it's good for anybody. It gives you that confidence that you may need. And looking at the stats for Richard Murdoch in this season, trying to see where he is in the point standings. 7th in the point standings right now. 18 points back. Oh, 18 points back. A little bit redundant there if I could speak English. 18 points off the lead, so a win will do him quite well in that regard, as that lead is shrinking, and with that lap traffic he did have to navigate. Now it's only about 2 3/4 seconds. Still a pretty good buffer, but he is starting to lose it, and the lap traffic not helping. Leo Bourdage in front of him right now.
It really isn't. And Corey, what driver is ahead of Richard Murdoch in the standings right now? The 10 of Tim Blum. So it's all coming together, and with our championship leader Sean Butler not starting the race today, Murdoch could have a big point standing that could even put him as far as the top 3.
And Richard Murdoch, Leo Bourdage didn't let him by, so Murdoch's still going to have to navigate around Bourdage. Bourdage isn't having that bad of a run. He's in the 10th spot, but it just shows the different paces on track for these various drivers. He will go wide in the carousel for him, but what has that done to the lead? 1.5 seconds. We had a 3.5 second interval between first and second 2 laps ago. Now it is down to under 1.5 seconds.
I'm going to call it. It's the aerodynamics. I think Murdoch had a great run there on Minto, who's been having a rough run there today just in general, but he got a great run there in the backstretch, then out through the bus stop, and now here he is chasing Leo Bourdage, who, as we saw a second ago, made it very tough to get by for Richard Murdoch. But yeah, Tim Blum, he's got it down to 1.3 seconds, much closer than 3.5 a second ago. It
does go both ways. You're going to get the draft within 3/4 of a second. It's going to help you out by a couple tenths on the faster parts of the track, but it's also going to hurt you in a couple parts of the track. In the carousel, up the S's, you're going to have that little bit of toe, but you also are going to get a little bit of that dreaded aero push in those high downforce sections of the track. You really need every last bit of downforce you can get. Being stuck behind someone in a single file part of the track, that's going to get taken away from you. But ultimately, right now, it's just going to be a matter of defense versus offense. I mean, the difference in tires is only 1 second, but we've seen these guys up, or 1 lap rather, which I think is going to be a non-factor, but we've seen these guys all race. Murdoch would fall back to about a second back, then he'd get a good run going, he'd get to within a half second, then he'd drop back, and then Blum would have a mistake, he'd catch back up, but the positions never actually changed between the two of them. So now, here we are in the waning stages of this race, and it's a complete role reversal. Murdoch's going to get loose entering corner number 1, but he's going to hang on to it. Now he's going to lose even more of his lead.
Yeah, that gap back to Blum now down to 6 tenths, which is half of what it was the lap previous. So Richard Murdoch maybe really struggling there, even with one lap less tire.
And look at the draft, look at the run through the S's Blum got.
He is flying right now. He found that speed right as we said Murdoch may be able to hold it. Blum is just flying now, and he's been great all day in this section of the track. So he may have a chance here in these last 2 corners before the home stretch here on Murdoch.
We talked about it in our Fave Motorsports merchandise keys to the race. We talked about the wheel hop. We talked about getting loose on entry of the corners. But here comes Tim Blum, and did Murdoch just let him go?
It really looks like it, because there was no defense being put up there from Murdoch after all we've expected from him. And now Blum, you'd expect with some draft in front of him and open space ahead of that, he should just be able to take off here.
I mean, I thought maybe Murdoch just really doesn't think he has enough in the tank. I mean, not in terms of gas, but, you know, in terms of just speed, doesn't have enough, or maybe he thinks he has a better chance from behind because Blum was going to get by him at some point either way. I mean, surprising to see a driver just give the lead away that easily in the closing stages, but if he just really doesn't think he has it, maybe he just didn't want to risk wrecking both drivers. But Tim Blum, remember, he was 4 seconds back after that pit stop cycle, and he had to will himself back to it. Remember, Murdoch pitted a lap earlier, and a little bit slower of an pit stop cycle for Blum kind of compounded to that deficit. He drove back and kind of had the aid of a couple lap cars, and who is that? That's Gary Weaver getting a little free exit in the carousel. But using a little bit of lap traffic to help shrink that gap, Tim Blum started on the pole, led the majority of the race, and now here he is in position to take the checkered flag.
Yeah, 5 laps to go. You really expect, with the pace Tim Blum's had all day, and especially in these last few laps, I think he's a pretty safe bet here for the win. But the biggest battle I can see on track right now is going to be between Ethan Troutman and Max Theriault, trying to fight his way back into the top 5 after his very different pit strategy than anybody else we've seen today for Theriault.
Did I not say that the best Theriault was going to do is a 6th? Well, obviously that wasn't the case, because he got himself into the top 5, and actually looking at the telemetry, there is a chance that Eric Johnson is going to be very tight on fuel. He's been out there for, this is his 11th lap, there's 5 to go. So I think Johnson might be on fumes, but he should be able to make it to the checkers. But I think either way, there is a chance that, let's see, he's coming through the middle of the S's is Theriault. Actually, there's no chance other than that. So the only way Theriault is going to get a 4th is if the 33 runs out of fuel, so.
Which, you're right, Corey, is a possibility, but I just don't think it's very likely with, as you talked about, that 16-lap fuel stint.
And it does look like Blum is pulling away rather easily right now, as we thought he was going to do earlier, but Murdoch put up that huge challenge, and there's, for some reason on this last stint, maybe it's that extra lap, maybe it's just to overcook the tires, whatever it happens to be, but he just does not seem to have it this run, and he will most likely settle for that 2nd. But again, something to note that did take that lead away, Marshall, is we saw how much lap traffic that Murdoch had, and I mean, mind you, lap traffic is not required to get out of the way, so they didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but they definitely didn't do any favors to Murdoch.
No, they really didn't, and they were helping him out a bunch there originally in that battle, but by the time it really came down to crunch time and Murdoch really needed some help, they just refused to make it easy for him, which is a little bit understandable in series where you can get a lap back by staying on the lead lap. But in a race like this, I think it's just best to, if you've got room in front of and behind you, just let the guy by. And unfortunately, it didn't happen to Murdoch, and I think Blum with his pace still would have passed him anyway, but that just didn't help Murdoch's case in this closing laps.
Yeah, so we don't know if he was able to get through, maybe Murdoch would have been able to hold the lead for a little bit longer. And maybe if he had held the lead up until maybe around this lap, 3 to go or so, he would have taken that chance and tried to fight off the position a little bit more. But we talked about Eric Johnson, and Eric Johnson in the 33, he has to come to pit road with 3 to go. That's going to benefit Max Theriault with another position. And his 3-stop strategy will get him a 4th spot. Obviously, up front, we aren't expecting any pit stops at all. But again, that 33, he's going to go from what was the 4th place run rather, to he's just now exiting the pits. Looks like maybe a 6th place effort.
Yeah, Theriault getting that 4th place position that I think he may have had a little bit more of a successful day if he'd gone with a more traditional strategy. Maybe it just came down to preference, but you definitely can't complain with a 4th. But I will bring up 2nd and 3rd. We've pretty much rid off James Skelton all day as being that top 2, but he ran 7/10 quicker than Murdoch in that last lap. And with only about a 2-second gap, maybe even less now to close in 2 laps, he may be able to make a challenge for that 2nd spot if he hurries.
I mean, it's going to update right now, but that prior time by, he was actually almost a 2nd faster than your leader as well. We'll see what it updates to this time by. Yeah, he was 6/10 faster than Murdoch, ½ second slower than Blum, but that's a 2-second gap, 2 laps to go. I mean, if Murdoch's is off the pace in terms of tire wear and having no grip left as he seems to be, I mean, there's a fighting chance that could be a possibility. Let's see, I was just looking at Eric Johnson getting by Ethan Troutman in that 962. So Eric Johnson, even with that pit stop, he ends up going from 4th to 5th. So really just a flip-flop between him and Theriault. So, and also in regards to Theriault, you figure if he makes a traditional strategy, he didn't really have the pace for Blum or Murdoch, so he probably would have finished 3rd, maybe 2nd if Murdoch continued to drop off the way he is. So really, that extra strategy that he did pull, it didn't really take him that far out of it. Maybe as out of it as I originally thought he would.
Yeah, I think you're right. Somewhere in that third area for Terrio would have been realistic on a traditional strategy, but maybe fourth, because here comes James Skelton in the 86, 1 lap to go, but he is flying right now.
Yes, we are on the white flag lap. Tim Blum's going to sail it off into the first corner in that tied ride by about 4 seconds, but there is a potential battle heating up for that second spot, as Skelton has gotten to within the half second or so of Richard Murdoch. He didn't actually get off of 1 very well. That lead jumps back to about a second, but we can't take focus away from that number 10 car and the amazing ride he has done tonight, the tied ride he has done tonight. You can see that car essentially not even a scratch on it. I mean, maybe he kicked up a little dust here and there, but has done an amazing job running that ride nice and clean, and just doing everything right, getting the pole, being fastest in practice, and just really just running that perfect race, and, you know, just taming the road course here that is Watkins Glen, and just has 2 more corners to navigate. As you can see, there may be a battle for second in the rearview mirror, but 39 spins out on the track right in the middle of the final corner there. Tim Blum's going to take the win, and the battle for second will cease, but it's going to be Tim Blum winning here at Watkins Glen, and Richard Murdoch just hardly will hold on for the second over the 86 of Skelton.
It was a very good battle there for second, but even better job today for Tim Blum. Tide might take the wrinkles out of Sheets, but there were no wrinkles in his run today.
Whoa, somebody just absolutely died in turn number 1, and that was Brian Phillips. I don't know what that was about, but...
What did I just witness?
Maybe he asked for no pickles and they put pickles on the Whopper. I don't quite know, but... slightly distracted. I think this is just called a guy who does not like a road course, or that he was just trying to emulate Jimmy Johnson in the year 2000. There it is. So that is that, but back to serious terms. I want to congratulate again Tim Blum in the number 10 machine on his efforts here tonight at Watkins Glen International. So he did a bang-up job in that tied ride, so congrats go to him. But one thing we do want to do is give you the PTR TV finishing order here tonight from Watkins Glen International. Leading 34 of the 40 laps here tonight was Tim Blum. Richard Murdoch led 6, but just didn't have enough at the end. He'll have to settle for the seconds. James Skelton in 3rd, Max Terrio in 4th, Eric Johnson in the 5th spot, and then we have Ethan Troutman, David Kamara, Andy Lee, Joshua Buckley, and in the 10th spot was Brandon Minto.
Then we got Kyle Souza, Patrick Orr in 11th and 12th, the Strano brothers in 13th and 14th respectively, Gary Weaver in 15th, Brian Phillips in 16th, Leo Bordage in 17th, Eric Tupper in 18th, Christopher Rothrock in 19th, Kevin O'Brien in 20th, and the 2 drivers who didn't start, Todd Cray and Jesse Baker.
All right, so that is your finishing order here tonight, but we do want to start with the post-race show here tonight, and I think we do have the majority of these drivers here with us here today. So we have the 3rd place driver of James Skelton, and we'll bring him into the booth with us right now. All right, James Skelton, you got a copy with us, brother?
Yeah, I got you, man.
All right, so you really made a good effort to get that 2nd place at the end. You probably needed 1 more lap to get it, but just talk about the road race here tonight with the strategy, the short fuel cell, and ultimately how it affected your race here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, a 3rd place outcome, that was... I'll take it. That's pretty positive. But I made a little error. I think lap 2 or 3 going to the bus stop. I went to downshift to 2nd and it didn't go into gear, and then I just overshot and lost probably a second or 2 seconds from there. And then at the end, I knew Richard burned his. I think he pushed too hard in the beginning, and then I was catching him. And then my crew chief said, with two turns going in the last lap, that I had 1 lap left. So I thought I was going to be a little bit short, and then I ended up the race with 0.2 gallons left. So I could have pushed harder that last lap and took it to Richard, but 3rd place overall, it's a good finish.
Yeah, by all means it is. And I mean, ultimately, it seems like Tim Blum, we see in every single series. I mean, we're just first time covering you guys. We see in every series, there's always one road racer who just seems to know what he's doing and has the hand over the rest of the field. Didn't really seem like that was the case tonight. It seems like everyone in the top 5 or so really have good road course pace. Do you really consider yourself one of those guys in the league that you kind of look at the road courses as an opportunity?
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely think, this is definitely one of our races without, especially the 88 being in the race this week. But Max would have been there if he would have probably changed his pit strategy. And then I know Eric, he pitted on lap 12, and that hurt him. But we had real similar pace. So I think the top 5 for sure, and even Ethan and then David, we were all pretty close.
Yeah, definitely, and it made for a good call in the booth, and you had a good run on the bottom end of the podium here tonight. Anyone you want to give a thank or a shout out to here tonight?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out, to Tim. Great win for him, and then fun racing with Josh, my teammate. My other 2, DJ and Sean, couldn't make it tonight. And once again, thank you guys for the broadcast, and you'll do an awesome job.
I appreciate that, brother. Congrats, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon.
Have fun, man. Have a good one.
And now Marshall has caught up with second place driver of Richard Murdoch.
What's going on?
Oh, hey, how's it going? So yeah, second place position today. A very solid finish, if I do say so myself. Overall, the strategy at the end of the race there, it was starting to play a big part in terms of track position, and just one lap made a big difference in terms of pit stops. So did you have any strategy there in comparison to Tim Blum when it came to pit strategy and what lap you pitted at the end?
Yeah, so Tim and I are both on full throttle race, and he was kind of saving that second fuel run, and I decided to save the third fuel run, which is how I got such a big lead on that last run. Then he reeled me in really fast, and then I just let him by. So his strategy worked out better than mine, and then, he came in with the victory.
Yeah, it doesn't get much more of a clean finish there for full throttle racing. 1-2, you can't argue with that. And how do you think the tires really played a big part here today overall at Watkins Glen? Definitely a very slidey, difficult track, and also the new aero package. Like, how is this different than your experience at Watkins or in road courses in general?
Honestly, the tire, it wasn't too bad for me. I would just, obviously start letting off a little earlier. I was able to maintain pretty well in the middle of the run. There, the last couple laps, I'd really have to feather the throttle so I wouldn't spin coming out of a corner, which, I did a few times. But this new aero package is a little bit tighter, a little bit more forgiving, I think, especially with the less horsepower. And it, I think it actually makes it a little bit easier for me.
You talked a bit there about those last few laps and the change of conditions. The one big guy that was a beneficiary of that was James Skelton, who I'd imagine was getting closer and closer each of those last few laps. Were you worried in those last few laps about maybe a potential battle there? And did you drive any differently in that end stint to stop him?
I definitely was keeping an eye on him. He was reeling me in. I was doing about 3/4 throttle that whole, I'd say, last 11 laps. So I knew that I saw him coming closer, but I had to mentally tell myself not to press harder because I'd run out of gas, and then I'd do a whole lot worse than third. And he pitted the same time I did, so I figured his fuel was about the same as mine. And then I shut my car off on the carousel, and I saw he was right behind me, so I just decided to quit saving then, and I was sputtering coming across the line, and after talking to him, he had about 0.3 laps of fuel himself, so I'm glad I was able to hold him off. But yeah, that was definitely close.
That was a very close finish, and I just got to ask, is there anybody you want to thank or give a shout out to for your second place performance?
Oh yeah, definitely my teammates. We did some practicing this week and got good notes from each other. Again, congrats to Tim for the win. My friends out in Vegas, Sam and Brandon, they're awesome little kids. Anaya and Jeffrey. My buddy here, Walter Cooper's watching. My uncle Gary. My dad up in Chester, South Carolina. My brother Michael. My friends Katie and Jeremy, and to you guys for broadcasting us. It's awesome. And anybody else that watches us, hey, I appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully we're putting on a pretty good show for everybody.
I will say quickly before I go, you had one very big fan in the YouTube chat who seemed to be giving you some support there, so you may want to thank them once you get off the air. But yeah, thanks Richard for doing the interview.
Absolutely, thanks guys.
And now we have our winner here tonight, Tim Blum. All right, Tim, you got us, brother?
Yeah, how are you guys doing?
Good, man. And obviously you're doing good yourself. You didn't pitch a perfect game there. You had to come back from behind after that. After Murdoch got you on that mid-race cycle, and you had to fight back. But other than that, you kept that tide right on the track. You did a great job. You were really quick in qualifying. So just overall, I mean, what was the feeling like in this new package here at Watkins Glen?
It was, it definitely felt different. You could brake deeper into the corners with the extra downforce, but still treacherous with all that horsepower. So I know I went off 2 times. It could have been around any corner. You could have made a mistake. So it was tough out there.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, what else was tough, I believe, was the pit strategy. Obviously, the 50% fuel load. It seems as though just about everybody was, I mean, even if you made it to the end, you were rather close. So how much thought did you put into the strategy pre-race, and did it go according to plan?
For me, it went pretty close to plan. I knew I was going to have to save really hard on one run, and I know Richard and I were going back and forth, and he said, he's like, man, I got to pit this lap, and I didn't say anything. I was like, I think I can make it one more. So, I honestly had a pretty sloppy last lap there. I missed every entry, and I was trying to clutch it, and it's what put me behind Max and Richard there, but I was able to get it back because I was able to be 100% aggressive on that last run, which was nice.
You were indeed, and as I look at the schedule, well, first off, obviously you win this race, which coming from 6th in points, looks like you may get upwards of even 2nd or 3rd after this in the points, depending how it plays out with Sean not being here. But you guys head to Darlington next week, and I believe it to be the Xfinity car. I'm not quite positive on that, so what do you feel like you have at Darlington next week?
Yeah, it is the Xfinity car. It's Darlington. We're going to do some throwback paint schemes. It's going to be fun. It was a wild race. A few seasons ago, there was a late race caution, and a few guys stayed out on old tires. A few guys had brand new tires. We were all over each other, so I expect more of the same.
All right. Well, be a good race for you guys, man. Congrats again. Any final shout-outs you want to give?
Yeah, I was racing for my mom tonight. I lost her 4 years ago yesterday, 23rd, and it's always a tough time of the year for my family. And I don't want it to be a sad story. We all got someone that we've lost that we go on each day for in honor of them. So just want to shout out for her. This one's for you, Ma. I think my dad and my sister are watching, my friend Will. Thanks to your broadcast, we get to play this silly little game and act like real race car drivers.
Man, in the end, that's really all what it is. So, again, congrats, amen to you and your family, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you later in the season.
Yes, sir. We'll see you next week.
All right, so as we will start to wind down coverage of the broadcast here tonight, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to PTR TV for tonight's broadcast of the Red Light Scrambler series. Our channel sponsors, we want to give a quick shout out to Movement Fabrications, based out of the UK. The ventilation service to Druss, but they also do fabrication of every sort, custom-made products for just about anything. If it's made out of metal, Air Movement and Fabrications can help you with it. Obviously based out of the UK, but you can still help them out by giving them a shout-out and a like on their Facebook page. Brandon's companies, Fame Nation, FameMotorsports.com, as he calls hashtag Fame Nation. He does custom car wraps, he does hero cards, paint schemes, real world merchandise such as t-shirts, stickers, basically anything that you need to help brand yourself in the racing world. Brandon has your back, so check him out on all those hashtags and social medias, websites, all that good stuff. And of course, we couldn't do anything without the simulator. iRacing, the original esports racing game, the official title of NASCAR, World of Outlaws, IndyCar, IMSA, USAC, Supercars, and Legend Series all have iRacing as their sim of choice. And if you are not a member, strongly suggest giving it a check out. So unfortunately, we won't be covering these guys next year. I will be out of state for the 4th of July break, but we will be back in 2 weeks with these guys on June 24th. Actually, let me check that. I'm incorrect by calendar. July 8th, if I can read a calendar. July 8th we'll be back, but we are back Wednesday night with the Dreamer Racing Series at Motorsports, so check that out. So anything you want to add or throw in, Marshall?
I do just want to give a quick shout out to my lovely girlfriend Mariana, but But yeah, overall, I had a great time today. It was my first road course race, so I really enjoyed it. I thought that went well, and yeah, I've loved this series so far this season. It's been a great time, and come back here in 2 weeks. I can't wait, and if Sean Butler is able to come back and fight for his championship, that may now be taken over by Max Terrio. So great race today, and hope you all enjoyed it.
Yeah, sentiments are definitely shadowed. Hope you enjoyed. We did. Have a great night, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.
See you guys.